Welcome to CoreTech Revolution's webinar. My name is Jane Niederberger, and I have over 30 years experience in both the healthcare and technology worlds. I've been working with CoreTech Revolution for the past several years as we focus on strategy and bringing healthcare organizations to the next level. I'd like to introduce you to Michelle Burton. Michelle is the principal owner at CoreTech Revolution, with over 20 years of healthcare and technology experience. CoreTech's been in the business for 15 years, working with a variety of healthcare and technology companies. Today, Michelle will be taking you through our third webinar. The focus for today is on building trust. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to add them to the chat, and they will be addressed at the end of our discussion as time permits.
Thank you, Jane, and welcome to our webinar on trust. We're so glad that you're here today. Today's webinar is going to focus on how trust impacts senior managers and executives. We will focus some on the impacts of employees and building trust within that group of people, but the primary focus will be from a leadership perspective. As Jane mentioned, we already talked about aligning goals and shared values and the impacts that confusion in those areas can have on an organization's culture. And today we'd like to talk about how that confusion can have an impact on trust inside of an organization, which is key to an organization's overall success. So I'm going to start by defining trust. We all think about trust. We think we know what it means. But I think in this case, the definition of trust is, very relevant. Webster defines trust as two things: an assured reliance on one's character, ability, strength, or truth of someone or something, and one in which confidence is placed. An assured reliance on character. I think that is key to trust. There is an unwritten expectation that people can depend on you. As a leader, as a senior manager, your team has an unwritten expectation that they can count on you, that you are going to be consistent, that you are going to do the things you say you are going to do, and they can believe in that. As Jane mentioned in the webinar on shared values, you have to walk the talk. And I think that's what this means in the definition of trust. You have to do what you say you're going to do. And it reminded me of when, I was a kid. People don't say this much anymore, so I'm going to show my age, but, people say, do what I say and not what I do. That breaks trust. That's what we're talking about here. You want to say and do one and the same thing and be willing to be the change in others that you want to see. And a small example here is, and it is just a small example, but I think it's relevant. If you want your employees to be at work from 8 to 5, it doesn't matter if you're working as a leader crazy hours. They need to see you there inside that same time window. They're going to mimic or mirror what you're doing. So even though that's just one small example, it can be applied to a lot of different things. It is critical that you do and say one and the same thing. So why is a culture of trust so important? Building a culture of trust can transform an organization. I've seen it done a lot of times. And a lack of trust can do the same thing. It can completely destroy an organization. And so I've added a few statistics here of what a culture of trust can do to have a positive impact on an organization. People are 106% more energetic at work. They're feeling 76% more engaged in their jobs. They're experiencing 74% less stress, taking 13% fewer days off for illness, and overall reporting 29% more satisfaction with life in general. If you don't have a culture of trust, as I mentioned, you can completely destroy an organization. So I worked with a small company, and I'm not going to share names at this point because some of this is dirty laundry that the organizations I'm going to talk about probably wouldn't feel comfortable with me sharing. So I'm going to protect the innocent. I worked with a small company that had an employee. It was a startup company. There was probably 10 or 12 people who worked for this organization in total. There was one employee that was very dissatisfied with their job. They did not have faith in their leadership. They did not have trust inside their leadership. And within, I would say, 6 months, I watched this single employee share those opinions repeatedly over and over and over with the other team members until suddenly everyone on that team felt very similar to this employee. They were all very dissatisfied with their job. They were all very distrusting of the management team. And they had very little faith in the success of the organization. And the leadership in this example had some very difficult decisions to make. They had not, in my opinion, looking back on the scenario, done anything that would be or would have been considered inappropriate. They were a strong leader. They were confident. They made good decisions based on the best choices for both the company and the people who worked for them. They were very family friendly and family oriented. But there was this, again, one employee who just didn't gel well with the organization. So at this point, this leader had to make a decision. Could they build the trust back in the organization, or did something else need to be done? Because at this point, given the size of the organization, they were starting to fail greatly with the entire team having this very toxic environment. So this leader did a couple different things. They tried to talk to the employee one-on-one, and they did that several times over the period of 6 months. But as the problem began to grow, what this leader ended up having to do was make some drastic changes inside the organization. And I watched as this person helped almost their entire team get jobs elsewhere. They helped make referrals. They helped place them in places where they were happier. And this leader had to rebuild their entire team because of one person's dissatisfaction and lack of trust. It caused a great amount of discomfort for all of those involved and had an extremely negative impact on the organization as a whole. Now, to put the positive side of the story, so I'm just not leaving it all dreary, this leader did go on to rebuild the team and does today have a successful organization, so that's very good. But I just wanted to share the example on how one person's lack of trust isn't just that one person. It can spread like a virus across the organization. And so you have to think about what makes trust so powerful, what gives it so much power. And if you think about that, you have to ask yourself, what are some experiences that you've had in your work or even personal life where trust was high or where trust was low, and how that impacted your overall performance, and happiness? And who do you trust? And why do you trust them? I think most of us connect and trust people based on a couple of different things. One is you have to feel heard. You have to feel listened to. So as a leader, it's our responsibility not to just say, come talk to me anytime you want. My door is always open. I'm always here to listen to you whenever you want. You have to be willing to actually do that. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure those of you on the call feel the same way. I've seen a leader say those words, but then, when somebody actually has a problem, hey, my project is falling apart, or I'm having a problem with this one resource and they're not getting the job done, or I have a really great idea that I think would help the organization as a whole, and they go to talk to that leader doesn't really have an open door policy. They'll sit there, they're not engaged, they're on their phone texting other people, they're sending emails while this person is trying to talk. That is not promoting a culture of trust, because people need to be heard. They need to feel listened to. And you also want someone who can keep your secrets. And I'm not talking about the kind of secrets where, did you hear Sally was getting a divorce? I'm talking about secrets like, if you are a leader and you have your right-hand person, your executive assistant, your other senior management team members, whoever that is inside your organization for you, you need to be able to have difficult conversations with those people. And you need to trust that they're not going to take those difficult conversations and disseminate that information inappropriately throughout your organization. If they were to do that, if they were to share, you had a bad quarter and so finances were low that particular quarter, if they were to share that with the entire team, that would have a detrimental impact on the organization as a whole. So you have to be able to trust that the people that you're surrounded by are going to be able to keep your secrets. Organizational, and secrets might be the wrong word, but confidentiality, things that are appropriate to share. And not just those senior leadership people, you also need to know that your team is going to be able to keep your secrets. And then lastly, you need to be able to feel like people are on your side, and that as a whole, those people have your back when you need them to, that they're going to promote you. You have a great idea as a senior leader. You want to know that the other leaders inside your organization are going to rally around you. You want to know that your team is going to rally around you. You need to feel like you're not out there all alone. And if you have those things, you have a very strong environment in which trust can grow. And improve the organization. Trust will grow, and so will the organization as a result. And so the thing I want to leave you with right here in this moment is that trust isn't just a goal inside of an organization. It's so much more than a goal. It's not just a shared value. Trust is, in fact, a company asset, and it should be treated the same way other assets within the organization are treated. It holds the same value as the computers that sit on your desk or the desk itself. And if trust isn't treated as a company asset, if it isn't part of the overall structure of the organization, you will fail, as in the earlier example. So let's talk about, why is it so hard to trust? Because we all have trouble with trust. It's not just a problem that one person has. I think we all have experienced issues in work and personal life where trust has been broken. Part of why trust is so hard is because it's scary. It's so scary to trust other people. There is so much risk that comes with trust. You have to be vulnerable. So another example that I have to share is I worked with another company in a consulting capacity, where the senior leadership, one of the senior leadership team members, had a very difficult situation going on in their personal life. And this person had to take sort of a step back from the role that they were playing inside the organization. And they had to share this thing that was going on in their personal life with the team of people they worked with, both their senior leadership team and their team of employees. And that created an immense amount of vulnerability for that person. There was fear that other people were going to be able, were going to judge them, reject them, not be there for them. And it was a very courageous thing that this person had to do, to trust those people that they worked with. And in this example, it was really beautiful to see that the senior leadership team and the employees together, they all rallied around this person. They picked up the pieces, they kept things moving while this person had to step away. And it was a very seamless transition. and did not have a negative impact on the company, because overall this particular organization had a huge culture of trust. It was what they lived and breathed, and they operated as a family. And they were probably a medium-sized organization, I would say 1 to 200 people. So it was a significant impact to have this leader step away for a while. But it was very heartwarming to see the process. So how do you build trust within an organization? So I'm going to talk about some things that you can do to continue to promote trust inside your organization. You have to keep your word. What you say you're going to do and what you actually do are important. So you can't tell somebody I'm going to do X, Y, Z and then go do something completely different. That would be detrimental to building a bridge of trust. You need to get to know people, smile. And so I want to use Jane's example from the first webinar on goals. These goals are very important that you have them. And one of her goals in that webinar was how to be the best senior leader that she could be at the time. And some of the feedback that she got in this example was that she was not very approachable and people didn't have faith in her. And so as a result, Jane made an effort to, as she was walking down the hall or wherever she might have been, to smile, talk to people, say hello, engage with those folks. And that had a positive impact. In fact, since then, in working with Jane, I've actually had people come up to me and tell me what a pleasure she is to work with, because even though she is in the role that she's in as a senior leader, she still feels very approachable, and they still feel as though they can truly and genuinely talk to her about anything. And that makes a huge difference. Admitting when you're wrong. This one, I will say, is a personal challenge for me. I do not like to be wrong. I like to be right all the time. Unfortunately, that's not the way the world works. So you have to be able to admit when you're wrong. We all make mistakes. And if you're willing to admit that you've made a mistake, both within your own senior management team and within your employee base, those things make a difference. It makes people feel more connected to you, and it makes you seem more human to them, which again just continues to build that overall culture of trust. Give credit. So how many of us have ever been inside of a meeting and you're sitting there and somebody else shares an idea that you shared with them and they pass it off as their own? That is maybe one of the most frustrating things that I think I see happen within an organization, and it happens all of the time, especially amongst senior leaders. You're constantly talking to your employees and they're sharing with you their ideas and their approaches. And I think in a lot of cases, you don't necessarily mean to, but you then begin to share those ideas and approaches with other people, and you forget to share that that was not your idea. It's so important that you give people credit for the ideas that they in fact have. It doesn't take just a second to say, you know, hey, I was talking to Michelle and Michelle said this really great thing and I think it's worth exploring. That's all you have to do. It's very simple. It continues to build a culture of trust within an organization, and it really promotes just an overall wellness and bond with you and that particular resource who, you know, had those ideas. And then walk the talk. You know, I sound like a broken record because I am a broken record, because that is so important in everything that we talk about across all of these webinars. It is so important that you walk the talk, and it's extremely crucial when you're talking about trust. If you tell people that you're going to do something, you absolutely have to do it without question. unless there is some reason why you are no longer able to do that. Something has happened that is preventing you from doing that particular thing. And if that's the case, then you need to take the time to go back to those resources and say, I really want to do this, but my child got sick and I'm not going to be able to be here today, or whatever the reason might be. Create that openness with those team members so that they understand you want to meet your commitments, you want to lead by example, but there's just something that's holding you back in that particular moment. Listen and collaborate. I think overall, this one we've kind of already touched on. You have to be able to hear what people are saying and then not just dismiss them. People have a lot, your employees will have a lot of really great ideas. The mark of a good leader isn't being able to do everything yourself, but instead it's the ability to surround yourself with those who are experts in their particular areas and can continue to make you look good by bringing your organization to the next level or your team within an organization to the next level. And being able to listen to those on your team and then collaborate with them to create those areas of success is crucial. And you want to also be able to talk about your goals and your obstacles. So you set your goals in the first webinar and your values in the second. And what are the obstacles to achieving those successes? What is preventing you? And the reason it's crucial to talk about those things is because if you don't talk about them, if you just fail to meet those goals, you're not, or it appears as though you're not walking the talk, right? And perception equals reality. So you have to change the perception. There are going to be goals you're not going to meet for a variety of reasons. But if you're talking about those goals and if you're talking about the obstacles with your team that are preventing you from achieving those goals, it changes their perception and therefore changes their reality, which just continues to build that culture of trust that you're looking for inside your organization. Praise people in front of their peers. So this one's easy. People like to be praised. And if they feel like they're recognized and they're valued, and you do that in front of other people that they are, working with, that makes them feel like, they can do anything. And it certainly makes them feel like you've got their back. And as we mentioned earlier, if somebody feels like you're on their side, you've got their back, then they're going to continue to trust you. That trust with you is going to grow. And that's going to be a two-way street. It's going to hold benefits on both sides. They're going to trust you, and therefore they're going to work harder for you, which means you're going to put more trust in them and give them more responsibility to, again, achieve your main goal, which is allow the organization to thrive. Don't gossip. This one, I think, is so crucial. I worked on a team, or with a team, where there was one individual who all this person did was gossip about everything. And similar to the first example I gave, where the people involved all became very toxic, the same thing happened here. There was an extremely toxic environment. Nobody trusted anybody in this particular situation. Employees didn't trust each other because they thought if they shared something, it was going to be something everybody knew about inside, an entire, multiple hundreds of people organization. Nobody trusted leadership because leadership wasn't doing anything about this person that everybody thought was causing this dysfunctional environment. And just overall, that got to be to a point where everybody was looking for leadership to do something about this person. And in the end, something was in fact done. But you have to remember, don't gossip. Don't talk about other people. There are reasons things are happening. And as a leader, you want to stop that culture of gossip. If you are a leader, don't start, that culture of gossip. Make sure that you are in fact talking to the people in your organization. And if there is someone gossiping, pull them aside, find out what's bothering them, address the situation directly, and put it to rest so that it doesn't continue to grow and fester inside your organization. There's one example that I forgot to give that I want to go back to with regards to keeping your word, and that is specific to, and so I'm just going to go back one slide there, that is specific to organizations working with other organizations. So this one is a little bit bigger. It's more complex than just a team of people in an organization. This is a scenario where there are multiple organizations involved and contracts in place. And one of the organizations that was writing their contract, everyone agreed to it. There were 3 different parties involved. Everyone agreed to it. Everybody signed off on the contracts. And then one of the organizations breached that contract and did not fulfill the agreements inside that contract. That is something else that can have a significant impact on a culture of trust inside of an organization, because now people are looking at your leadership team and they're wondering, how are you going to handle this situation with this other vendor? What are you going to do? Are you going to allow them to breach this contract? And in some cases, due to circumstances, that might be the right approach, and that would likely need to be explained with some level of transparency so that folks understand what's going on. And in other cases, you want to set an example by not allowing people to take advantage of the obligations the commitments that they made, and force them to keep their word. So I think that's an example that's just really important to hear, because it goes beyond just the interaction between leadership and employee, but it also shows the impact that trust can have outside of an organization when you're dealing with other organizations and team members that are outside of your control, and how breaches in trust at that level can also impact your organization. And people are looking to you as a leader to see how you're going to handle those scenarios. So I want to leave you with this quote that I think was so impactful, and it's really relevant, in my opinion, with regards to trust. So, I've learned that people will forget what you have said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And the reason I think that quote from Maya Angelou is so important when it comes to trust is because it is, in fact, so true. There, at a leadership level or at an employee level, people are going to forget what happened. They're going to, in 6 months or a year from now, they're never going to remember the scenario. But what they are going to hold close to them, if something bad or negative happened, if trust was broken, is that feeling of discontentment, that feeling of just blah or yuck. And they're going to associate that feeling with whomever created it, regardless of whether or not it's been resolved or the issue has been forgotten. That feeling is going to linger long after, or potentially for the duration of their employment. And so it's really important that you continue to focus on building that trust bond with people, and that you continue to strive for an organization's culture full of trust, and that you treat trust like the asset that it truly is, because it is so much more valuable than many of the other things that you're going to face inside of an organization. People are looking to you to lead them. So with that said, I want to take a minute to see if we have any questions. And while you're thinking of your questions, I want to take a minute to remind you that our next webinar is on building a strong team. So we've talked about goals, we've talked about values, we've talked about trust. Now, how do you use and apply these criteria to build a team that can help you grow? One of the key things that will be talked about in this particular webinar is our core values index, which is an assessment that allows you to understand how your team operates. So we've talked about that in the previous webinars. It'll have a stronger focus in this last webinar. And as I've said previously, I'll say again, building the right team is crucial because you can't teach a fish to climb a tree. So if you need to climb a tree, you don't want to hire a bunch of fish. You need to hire the right people to do the right job. And understanding that dynamic and how all of these factors can play in is crucial. So thank you for your time today. If there are no questions, I think we can close.
Okay, just a reminder that you do have access to take the CVI, the core value index from our website, or we will send you that link if you are interested in it. That may be very beneficial in light of next week's webinar also. As Michelle said, it's next week on November 14th, so we look forward to seeing you then. We may send you a brief survey in the meantime, just asking for feedback on how useful this webinar was to you. Thank you.